Genki 1, Lesson 9, Grammar Point 1, where you learn how to make past tense short forms of all parts of speech, verbs, adjectives, and nouns. Let's go. So, verbs in the past tense affirmative short form are very similar to forming te form verbs. The only thing that's different is the final vowel sound. So, instead of ending in te or de, these verbs end in ta or da. If you are feeling shaky on how to make te forms, you can go back to Lesson 6, Grammar Point 1, and review that grammar point. You can also go back and listen to or memorize that te form song, which, although it is corny, is very helpful for remembering how to handle all the different endings of u verbs. So, as usual, ru verbs are quite simple. You drop the final ru and you add ta instead. So, taberu becomes tabeta, okiru becomes okita, neru becomes neta. And that's how you do it. For u verbs, you're going to have to look at the final hiragana of the word to understand how to conjugate it into the past tense affirmative. For verbs that end in u, tsu, or ru, you're going to drop that final kana, utsu or ru, and add a small tsu plus ta, which remember gives us that pause. So kau becomes katta, matsu becomes matta, kaeru, remember even though it ends in a ru, it's an u verb, kaeru becomes kaita. For u verbs that end in mu, bu, or nu, again, you drop that final kana, and in this case, you add nda. So yomu becomes yonda. For u verbs that end in ku, like kaku, you drop that final ku and add ita. So kaku becomes kaita. There is an exception for the verbs that end in ku, and that exception is the verb iku, to go. And that conjugates the same as the verbs that end in utsu or ru, with a small tsu and a ta. So iku becomes ita. For u verbs that end in gu, kind of the same as the ones that end in ku, you just have to remember to carry over the dakuten or the tenten. So something like oyogu, to swim, you drop the gu and you add ida. Oyogu becomes oyoida. And finally, for verbs that end in su, like hanasu, drop the su and add shita. So hanasu becomes hanashita. With irregular verbs, again, as always, you just have to memorize what the short forms in the past tense are. For suru and its compounds like benkyou suru or sentaku suru, it's shita. Benkyou shita, sentaku shita. For kuru and its compounds like motte kuru, it becomes kita. So kita, motte kita. In the negative form, essentially what you need to do is take the short form negative, the nai ending, and turn it into nakata. So that na signifies a negative, and nakata signifies past tense. So, for example, taberu would be tabenai in the short form present tense. In the short form past tense, it would become tabenakatta. Kaku, kakanai, kakanakatta. For the irregular verbs, suru, remember its short form affirmative is shinai. Short form negative past tense, shinakatta. Kuru is konai in the present tense. In the past tense, negative form, konakatta. Okay? And essentially, this is very similar to how the negative past tense endings work with e-adjectives, which we'll look at next. So, e-adjective, short form past tense. It's kind of the same as the present tense, you just drop the des. If you want to unpack it a little bit more, in the affirmative, drop that final E and add katta. So takai becomes takakatta, and the kata signifies tense. No des, because des is a formality marker in this type of phrase. And the negative, you drop the final E from the nai and add kunakatta. So yasui, yasuku nakatta. The ku and the na are indicators of a negative, and the kata is an indicator of tense, of past tense. For nouns and not adjectives, they almost always grammatically perform in the same way. And in this case, we just replace the long form of deshita with datta. That shows our past tense. And in the negative, the janakatta desu, you drop the des because that indicates a level of formality, and you just end up with the negative past tense ending of janakatta. So if you want to say, I don't know, Tanaka wasn't a student. Tanaka-san wa gakusei janakatta. And that's your short form sentence. The usage of short forms in the past tense is the same as usage of short forms in the present tense. We use it to quote speech, we use it to express opinions, and we use it to speak casually to people with whom we have a familiar relationship. Okay, so that's it. Short form, past tense, all parts of speech. Don't forget to read